So you've never been on a boat before?
No, not at all. And then we got to Hawaii, and then of course you went out in convoys, and from Hawaii out you certainly were in convoys. And I never forgot that first anchorage was Majuro, and this thing in the middle of nowhere, 50, 60, 80 ships sitting there.
That must have been quite an impressive sight.
Oh, they were later sites were unbelievable. And then they had stop-off points. Majuro, can't think of that next one. Anyway, it was also a big fleet anchorage.
So you'd gone from San Diego, and you've gone to Pearl Harbor,
Right.
and then to, you just said Madeiro, correct?
Majuro.
Majuro, excuse
Yeah.
me. From that point, where did you go next?
We kept island hopping. We still had those Marines on board. It was an aviation unit. Eventually we got to Guam. That was, I don't know, 10 days later or something like that. And then they departed off on Guam. Yeah.
And what was your assignment on the ship at this time?
Sick bay,
Sick bay?
infirmary.
Okay.
But we had too many people. We didn't realize it, but we must have had about 20-something medical personnel, 3 doctors, which is way out of proportion for that. Yeah, but when you a ship that does landings, you got casualties coming back. That's the reason for it. And as we go, I'll explain what happens
Sure.
when you do the landing. But we picked troops up. It was in the Philippines, and we took them to the northern part of the Philippines, Gayan Gulf. That was the second phase of MacArthur's return to the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a transport. We didn't do any landings at that. And then they brought us back down, and we went to, it was in the central Philippines. And all of a sudden there were ships as far as you could see. While we were there, coming back, they did the invasion of Iwo Jima.
Mm.
But they needed, there was another landing coming. That's where we were going. 1,200, 1,400 ships in each landing. Staggering figure, staggering. So you had landing craft, you had battleships, you had destroyers, whatever. Then we loaded up the troops from there, and we went to Okinawa. That was the landing. So the 1,200, 1,400 ships doing this, there's 1,200, 1,400 ships at Iwo Jima. It blows your mind, the numbers.
What did you think of Iwo Jima when you were
I
there?
wasn't there.
Oh, for
We
the.
bypassed
Oh,
it.
you bypassed. I got you. Now.
Okinawa was north of Iwo Jima.
I'm with you now.
Okinawa was the first land that was invaded of territorial Japan. But they needed it for planes to land, whatever. I have to describe,
Okay.
in the process of my training, every corpsman had a secondary job. There were x-ray technicians, there were dental technicians, lab people, operating room people. I don't know how I got into it, but I became what they called a property and accounting technician. You still did your regular tours in the sick bay and all that. You had a second job. It was very important. I didn't realize at the time, nothing moves unless there's equipment. You need needles, you need bottles of this, you need bandages, you need plaster of Paris. That was my job. We stood watches in the sick bay. Now a whole different ball game comes up. You go on an invasion, it's a lot different. Word came down, we were designated as a burn ship.
What does a burn ship do?
In theory, people who had incurred burns in the invasion would be brought to us. Didn't work. I'll explain why.
Sure.
Anyway, now we start making bandages with white petrolatum, and we rolled them, and we sterilized them. Just about a week before the invasion, they changed the designation from burn ship to fractures.
Okay.
Now I got a problem. I don't have enough plaster of Paris. So they gave me a boat. I didn't drive it, a little landing craft. And we went and we begged for plaster of Paris from different ships. And we managed to get enough. Then I had the carpenters make me troughs. And we put the muslin in, laid the plaster of Paris in, rolled them. Would you believe just before the invasion, they take the designation, we offloaded all this, all the work we put in, another ship took it off our hands. Anyway, we went, they wake troops, landing troops up about 3 a.m. They gotta feed them, and they gotta get them ready to go into the boats, because you're ending up 3-4 miles offshore. It's pitch black, and these fellas on the ship were unloading all these landing craft in pitch black. They loaded the troops up, and then you've seen the pictures where they circle, the landing craft circle.
No, I have not.
Well, they would circle for an hour sometimes. And then the word came to hit the beach. Circles become one big line. The whole line's going. And I don't know how many of the ships like ours were there. Many. And they landed, and it was unopposed. The landing in Okinawa was unopposed. That's different than some of the other landings where they were killed on the beach.
Yeah.
You drop that front flap and your troops run out. The fellas in front didn't really have a chance to get to the beach. All right, there was unopposed. One of the doctors and about 6 of the corpsmen went ashore to treat casualties on the beach. That was an army unit, so they had their own medics. And then, what do you do on the ship when you're there for hours and hours and hours waiting for casualties?
So at this point, you can see the island.
No.
You can't. Oh, you're 3-4 miles out.
You can't see it.
And so you're not even. Are you getting any news?
No,
Nothing.
not those.
So all you're doing is watching the horizon.
Oh, we're
And
doing
wait.
better than that.
Okay.
We're doing important work.
Of course.
We're making sandwiches.
Ugh.
We're carrying pots of coffee to all the gun crews
Right.
who were up there on duty all the time.
Yeah.
And sometime maybe 11 in the morning, word comes, stand by to receive casualties on the port side.
Okay.
No more carrying coffee, no more making sandwiches. Everybody had a job. The people who did the clerical work on the ships became stretcher bearers.
Of course.
Everybody had a job. Well, when they brought them, they had about 20 or 25 of them on stretchers in a landing craft, big landing craft. But there was about a 30-foot drop between our deck and the water.
Yeah.
How do you get stretchers up? Very simple. They had a system. They had these cables with clamps, or they were rings, and they would go down to the landing craft, and they were covered with blankets, and they would slip these rings over the 4 things on a thing, lift them up 30 feet, and we take them off the rail. Now, the sick bay on the ship only had about 16 beds, too high. We must have gotten 25 men, first shot, first boat. There's a thing on these ships, they call it troop officers' quarters. The enlisted men are below decks, the officers on the main deck, only 2 high. Below that, they were 3 high. And that became our secondary hospital. And the one doctor would decide who was going into the sick bay, but we only had about 16 beds. We had an operating room. Anyway, and we hung around there for a couple of days. By this time, the kamikazes were killing us. I mean, absolutely killing us. Late March, all of April '45, beginning of May, maybe, Navy lost 32 ships,
Mm-hmm.
mostly the picket ships. The destroyers are up the line for warning. I think the number was 200 and something damaged, and over 5,000 men died from these suicide planes.